As soon as Sackboy was given a gun, I knew there had to be a challenge for us to try and not use it. And what better way to test that than the Metal Gear Solid level pack? We'll be counting every shot from the Paintinator that it takes to complete all 6 levels that are found in the DLC. The very first of which is nothing but an introductory autoscroller for the story, which doesn't even contain the Paintinator at all, letting us move to level 2 without any shots. The second level is the tutorial for the Paintinator, but unlike some other tutorials, we actually have to complete them to move on, since these doors don't actually open until we shoot everything. And since grabbing the targets doesn't do anything, we have no choice but to shoot them to make it through, adding 9 to our total for this room. The next room is pretty much the exact same thing, except this time there are 6 targets instead, putting us at 15. You can deload one of the checkpoints to fall through the floor to get out of bounds, which might be useful if you could get back in near the end or something, but it's just too high off the ground. The third room only has 3 targets this time, but each of them take 10 hits to take out, giving us another 30 shots just for this area. And that's assuming that we're also perfectly accurate with all of our paint shots. The next section goes back to single shot targets, but this time there's 14 of them, reaching a total of 59 for this level so far. The next room actually looks pretty promising, since there's quite a big gap above the main barrier, which, after spawning a second player, is very easy to completely jump over. Also, it's pretty lucky that we can even unequip the Paintinator in all of these levels at all, otherwise these co-op jumps just wouldn't be possible. Anyway, once we do jump over the barrier, the main doors are actually still closed, making this trick completely useless, forcing us to take 20 shots to defeat the wall so that the doors can open properly. Okay, now this is an obstacle that will actually benefit from using 2 people. Instead of shooting paint at the brains to kill the enemy, we can easily just use our second player again to get high enough to take out the bubbles the old-fashioned way, which did take a few attempts because of how the enemy rotates. But still, doing this saves us 4 whole Paintinator shots. And the final room goes back to making us use the gun to progress, since there's no other way to defeat this enemy, adding another 20 to the total and allowing us to finish the level in only 99 Paintinator shots. That might seem like a lot, but just be glad that it didn't take 1 more shot, okay? The beginning of level 3 doesn't actually give us the Paintinator at all, so we actually get to play the level completely as intended for a little while, with avoiding the spotlights and pulling the lever, where then we get the Paintinator. Thankfully this time, there aren't any stupid doors blocking us until we kill everything. In fact, these enemies are so short that we can just jump over them completely normally. So after unequipping the Paintinator, we can do just that and reach the next section without issue, where it's just more of the same, timing movement between shots. The next area is where our dodging skills are really put to the test though, with plasma going in almost every direction. It does make it a bit easier though, since some of the enemies stop shooting periodically. But once we make it to the checkpoint, we get presented with our first real platforming challenge. Normally, you would shoot the dissolve to reveal the platforms, but to avoid that, we can simply just run off in the back layer to land on the lower part, to then do a bounce jump back to the top to complete this section. After this, we go back to dodging enemies, which is pretty easy to do while being able to change layer to go around them, where we then reach the final obstacle for this level. Annoyingly, this enemy does have a door after it that only opens once it's defeated, with no other way around. But instead of taking out the top and then the bottom part of the enemy, you can actually sneak behind it and start shooting a spot where the bottom is just barely not protected. Sadly, it does still take 50 whole shots to defeat it this way, but it's better than like 80, which is how many it would have taken to defeat it normally, which completes the level in 50 shots, all coming from a single enemy. Level 4 introduces a lot of these platforms that only lower once they're shot, which means a lot more platforming for us to do. And in this first section, it almost looks like we could just go completely around it through this gap in the roof, but it's not actually big enough. We can get close if we just try to jump the entire gap, but we're just barely out of reach. Instead, if we get a second player again, we can use them to get a jump all the way up to the moving platform, where it's just possible to squeeze yourself between it and the roof. We can skip doing this for the next platform by going up this slope to go around it, where we aren't so lucky for the next few ones. We at least don't need an extra player though, since we can just use a bounce jump to get up to the first platform. From here, we can do some precise movement where we jump at the very end of the ledge to make it to the next one, letting us complete this section entirely. The next part mainly has us dodging enemies, which isn't so bad after staying back a layer for the start of it. Upon reaching the next checkpoint, it becomes a bit more important to time our movement precisely, but there are still a lot of safe points. The hardest part is definitely the last 3 enemies, where there aren't as many places to hide, but still, it's not that bad if you just pay attention. This part actually has a pretty big skip that we can do. By getting 2 players in front of this slope, it's barely possible to get enough height through another co-op jump to make it onto this ledge. From here we can do a banana jump with our main player to grab and make it up to the cannon. This ends up skipping that electricity and 2 other smaller platforming areas, letting us now start the final area of the level. Unfortunately, this part is a lot like the training level, where we get forced to kill enemies so that the level can progress, and there isn't anything that we can do about it. The first floor uses 10 shots to kill a single enemy. Then on the second, there are 2 more enemies that also take 10 shots each. The third floor then has 3 enemies, that again take 10 shots each. The fourth floor only has 1 enemy on it, but this one takes 20 hits. Then there's another one of these on the final floor, as well as 1 more enemy that takes another 10 shots, leading to this elevator section, taking 110 paintballs to get through alone. Which, after finishing the level, is also the total that we have for it. Now, on to the final level, the boss, where, unsurprisingly, we get introduced to the strongest enemy by far, which takes around 160 shots to completely defeat. If we were playing LittleBigPlanet 2, it would definitely be worth just using a few Paintinator shots to fly over everything to reach the scoreboard super early. But this isn't LittleBigPlanet 2. But there are the missiles that the boss fires every now and then, and as a speedrunner, whenever anything moves at a high speed, especially into the air, it is a requirement to try and abuse it for our own personal gain, which is exactly what we can do here. After using a second player to jump straight up onto the boss, all we have to do is wait for the missiles to fire, jump and then grab onto one, praying that we don't immediately explode. Then if we get lucky enough, the missile will fly around in the perfect way for us to then let go to land directly onto the scoreboard, completing the level that would have taken the most shots without any at all. Now after quickly finishing the minigame without any shots as well, because it's a survival game and you just have to press a button, we have completely finished all of the Metal Gear Solid levels, which, in total, took 259 shots of the Paintinator. Every single one of those shots, though, were just because of a literal roadblock that we could not avoid, since there were just so many enemies and targets that would physically block the way until they were defeated. I seriously doubt any of those shots can be avoided at all because of that reason, unless some major skip is found in one of the levels, but I think that's unlikely to happen. But I'd still encourage people to try and do it. It's always fun moving to different levels for challenges like this, since this is the first time I've made a video for any DLC. Maybe there'll be more level kit challenges in the future, but regardless, I hope that you've enjoyed and thanks for watching.